This is just for Kirat Singh Gandhi. Okay. Let's go. Let me check if Apolo is somebody requested to be on live, but that's not the right person. So, anyways, what is your favorite race of Apolo Ohno, sir? What do you think? Kirat, tell me what was your favorite race of Apollo, sir? Or anybody here? And we've already hit 972. And looking forward, yeah. Hi Samson Anna, hi Kira, 1000 meters 2002, Stephen Bradbury. I'm definitely gonna ask him about that. Yeah, that's one of my favorite races, I think. I'm sure that would be one memorable race for Apollo sir also, if he was there. If he didn't fall, I totally see him winning the gold. And yeah. Hi Samson Anna, hi Aarthi, hi Avdut sir, hi Mohit. Definitely, guys, remind me about that thing. Hi Riya, hi Harshveer, hi Vikram, hi Anmol. Hi Santosh, hi Shivani, hi Snowflakes. I know her name, I forgot her name, but yeah. Hi Anjani. Just waiting. Yes, Apollo sir is right here.
Stephen, good morning.
Good morning, Apollo.
Well,
how are you?
good evening, I should say.
Yeah, it's kind of late evening for us. Yeah. Firstly, thank you so much for getting up so early in the morning.
No, it's not too early. No, it's not too early. How are you? How is that? We got about 1,000 people in here. Beautiful.
Yeah, 1,000 people.
Fantastic. Hello, everyone.
Apollo says hi to everybody, and so yeah. Firstly, I wanted to thank you on behalf of the Indian skating community for doing something like this. Last live, I went with Chad Hedrick, and a lot of people wanted a short track skater, and definitely you are the man to contact. Sadly, I never met you. I've met a lot of Olympic medalists and stuff from US, but never had the opportunity to meet you personally. But I'm glad we are doing this, and little tense, but I think I'll loosen up as we go forward. But first question, I really want to use the time so that we can engage the community also to get involved.
Sure.
So first question, I've seen a video of you doing inline skating. So I want to know a little bit about your inline skating. As a kid, how was it? How did you transform to ice? But a little bit of roller skating in the beginning.
Yeah, so I started, I'm from an area of the United States called Seattle, Washington. So it's the Pacific Northwest. And it rains a lot in Seattle. And because it rains so much, a lot of the indoor activities at the time were very popular. And so indoor inline speed skating was something that I didn't know anything about. I used to go to the roller skating rink as a young kid just to hang out. That was my Friday night or Saturday night. It was the safe place that my dad could bring me to, and I could basically just go skate around. So I actually started originally on quad skates. That's how I originally started skating. And then, when inlines came along, those were the next progression in the sport. I picked that up very quickly. I had played many sports. I was doing swimming, I was doing speed skating, I had played baseball, basketball, track and field. I had done the traditional American sports, but the speed skating sport was fun, and I made a lot of good friends there, and that's how I began my my kind of entrance into the world of, I guess, speed skating in general and inline skating. And then I did, some outdoor races, and I was with a team called Patterson's West, and I still have a lot of friends who are on that team. But my father noticed that, in speed skating, in inline speed skating, there was no Olympics, right? And so there was, you could go to the World Championships, but it wasn't to the degree and to the size that speed skating on ice in the Olympics were. Specifically, first I started long track speed skating, and then I tried short track speed skating, kind of back and forth. And I didn't know anything about what I was doing. We were basically trying to find empty local ice hockey rinks that had ice time that wasn't available or that wasn't already sold. So we would take an ice time of like 9 p.m. until like 1 a.m. Or we would take an ice time of like 3 in the morning until 6 in the morning, because no one was skating at that time.
Wow.
And we didn't have, anyone who's ever seen, if you haven't seen short track speed skating, it's, inside of the ice hockey rink, and there's pads around the outside. Back then we didn't have any pads. So we used to go and find these old mattresses, like beds, and we would line them up against the outside of the pads. And some of them had some spaces in between them, and okay, just don't fall there. It was a really interesting time. So that's how I started. The first time I ever saw speed skating was on television. I was watching the Winter Olympics with my father in 1992, and then again in 1994. And I had seen a sport that I had no idea what it was. I'd never heard anything about it. It didn't even look real to me. These guys were like flying around this ice rink, going 35 miles an hour.
How old were you?
I was about 12. I was 12. Yeah.
So in the year 1997, you've tried to make the junior world team, but you didn't. But in the same year, you won the overall in the senior category at the age of 14.
That's
in
right.
1997.
Yeah.
Being that young, how could you, what went through like winning that title? I know it means a lot for a 14-year-old winning a senior title. So what, lead us through it, what went through your training, or how was it?
Yeah, so when I was 14, I got accepted to train in the Junior Development Olympic Training Program in Lake Placid, New York. And so this was on the other side of the country. I'm in Seattle. It was literally on the other side of the country. And, within 7 months, I was training for a spot on the world team. And as you mentioned, I did not make the 1997 junior world team. I was supposed to make that team. They only had 2 slots. And I remember coming home back to Lake Placid after that competition and just thinking in my head, I was so upset that I didn't make the team, because I felt like I could have. I felt like I should have. And I was so upset. And that's when I really, really started to, I was 14 years old, right? So how hard can you really train? But I think that's when my mind first went into overdrive and said, hey, let's really train hard. Let's really focus hard. And it was a very simple mindset, right? It was very, very, very black and white. It was, okay, before I was training, but kind of following the routine. Now I was going to go above and beyond what I thought was necessary. I wasn't only just going to follow the training program, but I was going to commit myself even more. I was going to take it to the next level. And so in that like 3.5 month, 4 month time span, my performance skyrocketed. I mean, literally skyrocketed. And, I showed up for those Olympic trials. 2 weeks before those Olympic trials, 3.5 weeks before our world team trials in 1997, we did a 9-lap time trial in practice. And so in short track speed skating, for every trials that you have, they do a 9-lap time trial and then a 4-lap time trial. And that will grade you or seed you within the top 16. It also shows the rest of the competitors how strong you are, how fit you are. Now, in a sport like short track speed skating, the time trial is important, but not that important, because we're racers. And by racers, meaning, we draft each other. You could be a terrible time trial athlete, but you could be an excellent racer. But it at least gives you kind of a level baseline to say, how strong is this person, okay? And so that 3.5 weeks before I went to those trials, I did a 9-lap time trial in practice. And that 9-lap time trial, I still remember to this day, was like 128.3. And it was very easy for me at that time. I remember thinking like, wow, that was really fast. Wow. Before that, we had never seen anyone go under 130 in our group. And so it was this really fast time. And I even asked my coach, hey, make sure that we check the track. The track wasn't too short, right? Because it didn't feel right. It felt too easy. And that's the beauty of being in flow, right? Is things come very naturally, and time kind of slows down or speeds up depending on your state of flow. And so I went to those trials, and I won the 9-lap time trial. I believe I won the 4-lap time trial. And then I think after that, I won the 1,500 meters, and I was basically secured a spot in that team, and I actually finished overall first in the competition. So I was a 14-year-old kid who didn't really understand anything about speed skating yet. I just had raw natural talent. And from there, we immediately, we kind of skyrocketed to being the captain of the team by default. But legally, I couldn't go have a sip of alcohol for the next, 7 years. It was a very interesting time. There was guys on my team who were, I think they were 35 plus years old, and they had been on multiple teams before. They had been skating for 20 years, longer than I'd been alive. And I had been doing this thing, for less than a year. So I think I had a lot of talent for the sport, but I also, my mind, I think, was showing at a very early age the potential of what happens when you really, really believe in something and you really want something.
Yeah, correct. And going back to talk to us about the Colorado Springs Olympic Training Center. You joined that at the age of 14 years old. To give up your family, your friends, to move out. I see people in India who are adults and they're not able to do that. I could only do it when I was 21 years old. That is how much I was restricted. But you were 14, and was your parents okay with it, or did you have to convince it, or what went to the process of you leaving home and going away? Because it's going to be a little inspiring for people who are looking here in India.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough. I was raised in a single-parent household. So my father raised me my entire life. My dad came to the United States when he was an immigrant from Japan. He came when he was 17 years old. He didn't have any money, didn't speak any English. He didn't know anything about the American culture. He just wanted to leave Japan, start a new life in the United States. And so my father brought with him that hard work and that mentality. And when I was born, he dedicated everything he could towards helping me and driving me and pushing me. He was a lot of very tough love, right? He really, really pushed hard to make sure that whether it was academics, whether it was sport, that I would commit myself in a way that he thought it would leave as little chance for failure as possible. And if I did fail, he didn't mind as long as I committed myself in the same degree. So at a very early age, he was starting to tell me these things and implant these things in my brain. So my father had noticed that I had a tremendous amount of ability and talent for the sport of speed skating. Now, the challenging part about this was I didn't recognize it. So, if you can imagine at the age of 14, I don't want to leave home. I don't want to go on the other side of the country. I don't want to go there. And so I'll make this story quite short, but the first time that my father took me to the airport, he had told me that, hey, Apollo, if you don't like it, you can come home after a month. I was going to fly alone and do that whole thing, go all the way inside the country, and we didn't have a lot of money. And so my dad couldn't fly with me at the time. And so he drops me off at the airport, and I say bye, and I had other plans in my head. I walk up to a payphone, and I pick up this phone. I call a friend who knew that I was supposed to go to New York that day, and I told him, hey, I'm supposed to go to New York today, but I'm not going to go. I need you to come pick me up from the airport. And I basically spent the next 2 weeks living at different friends' houses while my dad thinks that I was so angry at him I wouldn't call him from New York, until my father gets this call, and they explained to him that I was never at the airport, and they were curious if I was still going to come to this competition. And so I was being a bad kid, right? And my father finds out which house I was at, picks me up, then takes me to Then he takes me back to the airport 2 weeks later, parks the car. I notice that he's probably going to fly with me. We arrive into New York together. He then takes me to the coach in Lake Placid, New York, and essentially looks the coach in the eye and says, "Good luck," and then turns around and goes home. And this coach doesn't know what to do with me because he hears about this. He hears about this young kid who's got this talent, but he also hears this kid is very bad. Yeah, I say bad, but I was just a young kid, and so it was in that first month that I really started to recognize not only the talent that I had, but that I loved speed skating and that I enjoyed it. And that coach was very important. So, there was other athletes there who were far more talented than I, who were stronger, they were faster. Their body type was better suited and better designed for short track speed skating. And again, that it was that first entrance into the sport that I just started to recognize like what skill sets that I had and how I needed to place those things in the right possible way to give myself chances of having success. And that meant really in the most simple form, just hard work. Yeah.
Going back to 2001 Olympic qualifications, let me know if there's any question you want to skip or something. I'm totally okay with it. Going back to 2001 qualification, that is like you're now almost ready to be an Olympian.
Yeah.
And there was this race, 1,000 meters. I think if Shawnee Davis finishes first, that's the only way he can make it to the Olympic team. And second was, I think if you finish first or Smith finishes second, there's no way Shawnee will make it to the Olympic team. There was a lot of criticism after Shawnee finishing first, but regardless, you made the Olympic team. What were your thoughts before that race, especially?
Man, a long time ago, 20 years ago. So that was my first Olympic team. That final race was, so we all trained together as a team, right? Yeah. And so everyone was training on the same ice surface. And so, as you mentioned, Shawnee had to finish first in order to make the team. Any other placement would have meant that he did not make the team. I mean, naturally, he was my friend, right? And so I wanted Shawnee to make the team. Yeah. And I had already made the team, so my position was already secured. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna try to win this race. I'm not gonna try to risk it. And I think the rest is history. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm being completely transparent. I wanted Shawnee to win. I think Shawnee wanted to win. I think everyone wanted Shawnee to win because he was such an underdog. He would be the first African American short track Olympic speed skater in the history, and I felt like he deserved to win, and I felt like he deserved to be on that team. And then Shawnee, I don't know if you know, but Shawnee went on to be considered one of the greatest long track speed skaters in the world, not only in the Olympics, and he won gold, but kind of all time. So Shawnee's he's a very interesting guy. He's I don't know if you know this, but Shawnee's had many coaches in his life, but he's never actually had a coach full time. Exactly. So Shawnee used to train alone and make his own training program. And Shawnee, we grew up together, right? When I was 12, like we were the kids, like in the heat box talking to each other. And, you got to imagine, like when I first started short track speed skating, I'm half Japanese, so I don't look Japanese, but, I came from an era and an area in Seattle where it was a very diverse mix of cultures, very diverse. Yeah. Now, short track speed skating 25 years ago was not diverse. It was people who were from Milwaukee, people who were from, the Midwest, and it was like 99% people who were white. Yes. And so Shawnee was the only person that I saw, aside from a couple of others, who I thought I saw some diversity, who listened to similar music that I did. And so it was an interesting time, to think about the diverse cultures that we bring to the sport. And now the sport is so multicultural, multiracial. We were talking to speed skaters and teams who are all the way in India. I mean, it's an amazing time. Yeah.
Thanks to Derek, actually. I saw his video online, a slideboard video, and I wanted to become an Olympic, hopeful Olympic medalist one day. But I trained for 5 years, didn't make it the Olympics, but I thoroughly enjoyed the journey, getting trained under Derek Para. Learned a lot of stuff. I grew up only watching three people videos. One was Derek, one was Chad Hedrick, one was Apolo Ohno. That's pretty much India's summarize of Olympic skating.
That's awesome.
So yeah, going back to your first Olympics, 2002 Olympics, 1,000 meters, silver to gold, a controversy race, 1,500 meters, a silver. Best part about 1,000-meter race was, you were almost there to pass. You got blocked. I could see it. The whole world could see it. What was going through your head? Why you just raised your hand at that moment? You had the chance to go, but you didn't want to risk it. Can you talk to me about that a little bit?
Yeah. So this was the 1,000. The 1,500 meters. It was actually the 1,500 meters, and I had, there was about 2.5 laps remaining. I had just moved up, I think, with about a lap and a half remaining or a lap remaining. I just moved into the second position. One of my rivals was in first position, and I knew my rival, his strategy, and he knew my strategy. He knew that I was going to come from behind, and I knew that if I came from behind, he was going to try to block. At the time, the rules were different back then. At the time, he was going to try to move into my lane, protect his position, and then try to block me. Now, back then, man, so long ago, 18 years ago, back then, the sport, the referees would make a call. If you are in second and you are passing first, if you're in second and you're passing, and the guy in first comes over on you like this, okay, and blocks you off, and if there's impact or if there's contact, like let's say we bumped, and I would like that, right? If we bumped, I would be disqualified. So I knew this, right? Because this had happened many times in the year previously, right? In the year, the races leading up to the Olympic Games. So I thought in my head, as I'm passing, oh, here he's doing the technique he always does. Let me show the corner referee who's looking on from this angle. Let me show him, hey, there's no contact, there's no pushing, nothing's happening. There's no contact here, right? So show like, hey, my hands are here, nothing weird is going on, and then I'll slide into second and then go into first. And then, so that's exactly what happened. There was no contact. We avoided contact. And then after the race, I look at my coach, and I remember my coach kind of either yelling or kind of nodding his or her head. And it was at that point that I felt there was going to be a chance for something that was called cross-tracking.
Yeah.
And so that guy, that athlete from South Korea was disqualified, and then I was awarded gold. And so, look, short track is a really wild sport. Like, it's very unpredictable. A lot of things are outside of your control. And I was given gold in that race. It was my first gold medal. I had won silver in the 1,000 meters, the week prior, and I had cut myself and I had been stitched up. But it was a very controversial race for a number of reasons. One, South Korea didn't medal in the 1,000-meter men's. They didn't medal in the 1,000-meter women's. They didn't medal in the 1,500-meter men's. And then they eventually didn't medal in the relay. And so in the 1998 Olympic Games, 4 years prior, I believe South Korea had 6 gold medals from the entire Winter Olympics. And I think all 6 gold medals came from short track. So it was their sport. Like, it was, I don't know, it was like cricket or badminton to maybe India, right? Like, people love it, right? Or soccer or something, or another sport where there's millions and millions of people playing.
What would be the sport for America? Just out of box.
I mean, I think it's so we call them traditional stick and ball sports. So things like baseball, things like basketball, things like football.
And going back to the 1,500 meters, Steven, he shares the same name as me. He won an Olympic gold medal.
The 1,000 meter.
1,000 meter. Yeah, he shares he is considered to be one of the luckiest Olympic gold medalists in the history of any sports ever. I did a little bit research of him. I think this is what it said, something like he was not even supposed to make the Australian team. He was a standby. Then he made it to the team. Then, whatever happened, Can you share what you felt during the race and after the race?
Yeah. So I think people don't know this, but so Stephen at the time, Stephen Bradbury used to work for the skate manufacturer who used to make my skates in Australia. Those skates were called RBC, Revolutionary Boot Company. 3 days before the 1,000 meter final, Stephen Bradbury had called me, or I think he had called me or texted me, and he basically had said, "Hey, Apollo, I want to make sure that when you make the podium, when you win your medal in the 1,000 meters, you give a shout out to the Revolutionary Boot Company, and just give us some love, that we made your boots." He didn't think he was even going to make the final.
Yeah.
And then I call him, he has the golden horseshoe, right? And so this golden horseshoe, things happen in his life, whether you want to call it destiny or fate. And it was incredible. The way he made it into the heat, the way that he made it into the quarterfinal, the way that he made it into the semifinal, the way that he made it into the final, were a series of events that had to have happened perfectly. People got disqualified, people falling down, people bumping each other. And it was incredible. And so when that happened, when he was in the final, and I'm just going to be straight up, I didn't even know that he was in the race. I mean, I knew he was in the race, but he wasn't really in the race. He was in the very, very back. And I knew that he wasn't going to cause any problems to anybody. And I didn't consider him to be someone who had a chance at winning the medal, unless everyone fell down.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Everyone actually ended up falling down. So I think the beautiful thing about Stephen's story is it shows that we never know the real outcome, no matter what. And you can practice, you can prepare, you can give every single ounce of your energy and your time and focus, and you may not actually get the result that you want. And so, there was myself, a Canadian, a South Korean, a Chinese, and an Australian. 5 of us in this race. And I was leading with 2.5 laps to go. I had moved into first place. And I had been defending my position going into the last corner. And I had swung a little bit wide. The South Korean athlete had I think accidentally, but he had tried to pass on the inside. He fell into me. The Chinese skater already fell the corner before, so we got one guy down. The South Korean falls into me. Now we have 3 guys down. I take down, or one of us takes down the Canadian skater who's behind us. So everyone falls down except for Stephen Bradbury, who's a half lap behind, who comes across the finish line and is like, "What just happened in my life?" And so at the time I was devastated because I actually didn't know what just happened. I was so much in shock. Your adrenaline's cranking through the roof. You're pumping, and your mind is going crazy. You don't know what's happening. I didn't even know that I would cut myself. I didn't even know that I basically jabbed my own leg with my own blade. I didn't even feel it. That's how much adrenaline was happening. And so it was a really crazy time where, we were just trying to figure out what the next steps of this were happening. And then after I got off the ice and I had put my skates away and I'd figured out what was next, I noticed that I was cut, and I also kind of replayed the race. Actually, I went in the locker room and I replayed the race, and then I took my skin suit down and my leg was, bleeding. And then I kind of slumped down in the locker room and just kind of thinking like, man, like I was supposed to win gold in that race. What just happened? And I remember one of my strength trainers came in there, Brent Hamula was his name, and Brent was like, "Hey man, that was an incredible race. You should be so proud of yourself. Like you were able to win silver." I remember thinking that in my head, because I think culturally around the world, we're always thinking like, I got to win gold. I have to win gold. I have to win gold. And so we lose sight of the fact that a lot of these things are out of our control. Yeah. The outcome sometimes is we can't control the outcome entirely. We can only control our preparation. Yeah. And so when I was walking out, after I'd gotten stitched up, I walked out and someone interviewed me, "Apollo, what does it feel like to lose gold?" And I said, "I didn't lose gold, I won silver." And that statement was a very powerful statement at the time for people who were watching at home, because it felt like they were like, wow, this is a sport. And I made a comment that, look, this is short track speed skating. Anything can happen. And so you asked me what I felt about that. If there was anyone in that race who I wanted to win besides me, it would probably been Stephen. And the reason why is because Stephen had gone through this guy had gone through hell in order to get to the Olympic Games. Like there had been times when he himself had fallen on the ice and he had almost died several times. He had gone beyond paying his dues. You have an individual who technically was not the most technically gifted athlete. He also didn't he was strong, but he hadn't medaled very often, right? He wasn't a competitor, but he never gave up. And so I think it's a beautiful, beautiful story within that story that shows anything is possible. Anything's possible.
So what kind of training you enjoyed the most apart from ice? What did you hate the most during from 2000 to 2010? 2010. What was you really liked? What was one thing you really hated? Just going into the ice, you really didn't want to do it.
I didn't hate any part of the ice training.
Okay.
I don't think sure, there's some things that normally people don't like training that they're not good at, right? So if you're a sprinter, you hate endurance training. If you're an endurance athlete, you hate sprint training. But I think if you want to have real progress, it's getting into those uncomfortable zones that help you really grow, and recognizing that this is a part of the process of you growing as an athlete, as a person. That's where the real fruit is. It's not in the reward. I mean, winning gold and making the podium, those are incredible feats that are really unique. But we can't control that, like I said, right? Like I could have gone to the games and not won gold ever. And would it have changed my outlook on the world? Would it have changed the outlook on the time and effort and that I put in? So very early on in my career, I made sure and I made certain that I spent a lot of time concentrating on the process, and the process meaning the things within my control.
Yeah.
And if it's within my control, meaning my effort, how I show up, my attitude, my intensity, how much I study, all of those things. If those are the things that I can control, I will do them to the best of my ability, and I do them consistently. So I created a mindset and a focus that I think is still kind of consistent today in speed skating. But to me, that's the most important thing was the mindset. And there wasn't any training that I didn't love. I didn't feel like I had time to even debate that. Like my goals and aspirations of growth in the sport were so big, and I wanted to do things that no one else could do. I had to think beyond what my small brain would talk about, which was in this tiny little space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
And going back, you always concentrate on your mental strength, and I feel for a 14-year-old, it would be so stressful going in, to be part of an Olympic program and things like that, and going at the age of 19, going and doing the Olympics, and 23 going for another Olympics, 27 going for another Olympics. So what was one mental strength or technique would you want to pass it along to the people who watch you? What would be one thing, like a must thing you would do with your mental thing?
Oh man. So here's the thing. There's not just one thing. There isn't just one secret. There's not just one magic pill. Life and sport. I always say life is like short track speed skating, right? Yeah. You can prepare your whole life for something, and if it doesn't go your way, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to respond? Mm-hmm. So if I could boil it down to one thing, it would be, I can't boil it down to one thing, but I think something that's very, very critical is the consistency of practice and the way that you approach challenges, obstacles, problems, etc. So for example, if you say, I hate doing X type of training, right? Instead, if you could reframe that question and instead, or reframe that statement and say, I naturally haven't been very good at this early on, but it doesn't matter. Day by day, inch by inch, I'm slowly getting better. Okay. And you have to really believe that statement. So instead of saying, I'm just not good at that, therefore I will never be good at that, Now, we understand that genetically, some people are more naturally gifted towards certain things than others. Some people are very great at writing. Some people are amazing at singing. Some people are good at dancing, whatever that thing is, right? We all have our natural strengths. However, our intelligence is not fixed. So what does that mean? We know that how I am today does not mean that I have to be how I am today tomorrow. I can grow. I can slowly improve consistently, time and time again. So for everyone who's watching this right now, I want you all to recognize and realize that we human beings are so powerful in terms of our ability to adapt to challenge, to persevere, to the human condition always rises up, right? And we've seen that with COVID-19. We've seen that with all the history of human beings across the moment and across the planet. And I think that if I could transfer that mindset into other people, your ability to reframe the things coming at you. So the metaphor, Stephen, that I always use is, imagine you're in a bus, right? And you're just a passenger in the bus. You have no control over what's happening in the bus, and you're just looking out at over the windshield of this bus, and life is happening to you, and you can't control it because you don't have the steering wheel. I'm not pressing the gas, I'm not pressing the brake, and I don't have the steering wheel. I can only observe. And so when you're a prisoner in that feeling, everything is throwing at you at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And it's just like, oh man, one thing after the next is happening. I can't control it, can't control it, can't control it. Yeah. Just like in 2002, when I had fallen and I had not won gold, I had gotten silver, I could have said, hey, I was robbed. That was my gold. That should have been my chance.
Yeah.
But then my life would have been entirely different. And so small incremental changes in the way that we perceive challenges, the way that we approach challenges, the way that we look at these things that are happening in our life, or even having gratitude for the things that we have, they change the neurochemistry of our brain. They actually physically change the way that our brain works, which then sends chemicals to our body and changes the way that our bodies move and interact on a daily basis. Yeah. So my message will be, you're not a passenger in this speeding life, this life train. There's going to be many things that you cannot control. And while we cannot control what is in the road ahead of us or what is happening, we can always control our responses to that. Now, we as human beings, it's very difficult, right? We live in a world where we have this millions and millions of year old brain that's now operating in a modern society. And we get stressed out if someone doesn't call us on time, or if we're late, or these things that in the whole grand life scheme, it doesn't really matter. But we get stressed out about these things. And so my message is, get back into the driver's seat, grab a hold of the steering wheel, metaphorically speaking, right? Allow yourself to observe and see. Your natural human responses are going to be, I get angry, I get sad, I get happy, I get excited. That's being human, right? That's nothing wrong with having those emotions. But we also have the ability to discern the difference between reacting in our fight or flight mode, right? Just like if we were running from animals millions of years ago, or we were fighting battles or whatever that was. Today, we have the ability to take a half a second, a fraction of a second, a millisecond to ourselves and say, is this going to achieve what I actually really want? And it's a difficult task, right? Like, it's always challenging to do those things. How do we time and time again tell ourselves that this is the path that we should be doing and this is how I should be doing it? Because instead of saying a life is happening to me, life is happening for me, right? So you have to really believe that, and then you also have to put that into practice. So that was a long answer. So to condense it one more time, to reiterate what I'm saying, is you can't control everything that's happening in your life. Therefore, what can you control? Well, I can control the responses to what is happening in my life. So no matter how down you are, no matter how dark it gets, no matter how good it is, your response to that situation can greatly dictate the next course of action and how happy and how fulfilled you are as a person. And I think that's very, very important and a great reminder to remember. It doesn't take away from how hard you work. It doesn't take away from the sacrifice and dedication that you have. It's just a reminder that you can't control everything. But therefore, how you respond is how you always show up. So, like for example, if I was gonna hire someone for a job, I don't, I want someone who's somewhat gifted, right, in whatever skills that I'm looking for. But more importantly, I want to know how they respond to unknown. I want to know how they respond to uncertainty, to chaos, to anxiety when I push them, when things are getting thrown on them. And that's a skill. You're not born with that. That is a skill that you can train. All of us can train. I have the same skill that you have. It's in how often we practice this. And it's easy. I tell you, after a week of practicing it, you may forget and go back to your old self because that's how you've been conditioned as a human being. And so how do we recondition ourselves to this new era, to who we want to be? How do we do that? And that takes practice. It's like a muscle, like anything else.
Perfect. So a lot of viewers have been asking this question. What is your favorite medal? One. And I would ask another question to that. What was the toughest medal to earn? Out of all these 8 medals in your career, if you had to consider one medal, what is your favorite medal? And if you have to consider one medal which was tough to gain, what would it be?
Well, all the medals were tough. All the medals were tough. My favorite medal is probably the first gold that I had from Salt Lake City, or the 500 meters from Torino. Those are my 2 medals that I love the most. The toughest medal was the bronze from Vancouver in the 1,000 meter. And the reason why is because I had felt really good in that race. Everything seemed to be aligning perfectly. I had passed into second at the right moment. I had a lot of energy left. I felt like the pace wasn't very fast, so I could pass anytime I wanted to. And I was going to wait a half a lap after I passed into second, and then I was going to make my attack and try to win gold. And when I passed into second, an athlete from behind bumped into me, and then I slipped, and I went from second all the way to 5th. So like this, I went from I can potentially win this race to I'm not even going to make the podium. And then I came back and I ended up winning bronze, which is awesome. But that was a tough race. That was a really tough race.
Next question is 5 things you would want to tell an athlete who wants to be the next Apolo Ohno, skating-wise.
I think first off, I would tell them that you don't want to be like me. You want to be like the best version of yourself. Your own abilities, don't limit them by what I have done. Use them as target. Use it as I'm going to do whatever he did, but I'm going to do it better. I'm going to do it faster. I'm going to do it in my way. There's 5 things, right? So I have something I call the 5 golden principles. These are kind of the fundamental layer principles in my life. The first one is gratitude. And we know that starting a day with gratitude. When I started my day, I've been up for a bit. When I started my day, I was grateful to spend time with you, Stephen, and all of everyone who's here, who's tuned in. Yeah. So I wanted to feel that. I wanted to close my eyes and feel like, wow, I'm connecting with 1,000+ people who are in India, who are in sport in some capacity, or who are going to tune in. That's very powerful. That makes me feel really good. I'm very grateful for that moment. And so I think gratitude is our number one strength that we fail to recognize because we always want so much. I want this, I want that, I want this. Nothing wrong with that. But there are times where we have to slow down and have gratitude. So the first step is gratitude. The second step is giving. How can I give more of myself to help someone who needs it? It doesn't have to mean money, doesn't have to mean food, doesn't have to mean anything other than time. It can be a text message, it can be a thought, it can be a prayer, it can be anything. Giving something to where you are being selfless in your act. The reason why is that's a very powerful tool. You mix that with gratitude and it's a very uplifting experience. And those are the real natural human conditions that regardless of the mistakes that we make or the things we go through life, you can always right those when you go through. Gratitude, giving. The third one is another favorite. It's called grit. And we all know about grit. right? We know what grit is. So grit is your ability to persevere, to stay tough, to stay strong mentally. When you know and understand that there's going to be things outside of your control, and that this process to gold, to winning, to make a team, a test, whatever it is that you're pursuing, it's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult, but you've got to stick with this. This is very important for you to grow and make it natural. So make this grit when you know that the next 1 year is going to be very challenging. And when you accept that and you start focusing on the process of why it's going to be so powerful for you, you will start to train your brain to be that's your natural response. So that when things get really hard, when you're like for an athlete, if you're training very hard and the pain is very, very severe in your legs, or you feel the lactic acid, if you know that's coming, and you know that you have to respond to this in the right way with having grit, it's going to catapult you in a way that's just going to be incredible. And so, we've got our gratitude, we've got our giving, we've got our grit. The last two are some of my favorites, right? And so the reason why, and I don't know how much time you guys have on these 5 golden principles, but when we talk about these things, the reason why they're so powerful is because when you incorporate and I can send these to you after, Stephen, just to let you know. But the reason why, and actually let me see if I can pull this up. Hold on, Stephen. Let me see if I can pull this up. You guys can see. Oh, there's some medals back there. There's certain things here that I think are really interesting, and the reason why some of these things are so interesting in the 5 golden principles, or for the following reasons. So I'm seeing if I can pull this up and pull on my computer. Give me a second here. Okay, I'll forward you this after. It's not point. So what I'm saying is these 5 golden principles. I think whatever we're doing in our life, we need something we can anchor ourselves to, right? Like we need that. And when we anchor ourselves with gratitude, we know the response, right? We know the good chemicals released from our brain into our body. We feel good. We're happy for the things that we have today, right? Although we want more, we want to grow, we want these other things. Gratitude allows us to be thankful and happy for those things today. 2 is we understand that having that giving mentality is needed. We live in a world where many people around the world don't have what we have, right? Here in the United States, many Americans have forgotten how luxurious our life really is, how good we actually have it. That's a reality, right? That's a reality of having things very automated for you in an ongoing process. Many people around the world don't have the same resources or time that I would have. And then we understand that, making sure that we can figure out how to create a consistent realm of having grit. It's very, very important. The last 2, as I said, were very important because these are my favorites. The fourth one is upgrading. I call it gearing up. So upgrading your level of expectation. Now, what does that mean? So we have a personal expectations in our life. How do we make our personal expectations higher so that we can no longer accept anything less? This is our baseline. So for me as an athlete, the consistency of my training, that was my baseline. Anything less was unacceptable. People say, did you ever get sick of going to the ice rink? Did you ever get sick of going in a circle? To me, that question was unacceptable to me. Because I said, what are you talking about? Absolutely not. This is what I'm doing. Therefore, every day that I'm going to be there, I'm going to be the first guy on the ice, the first person in the ice rink, and the last person on the leave. That was my mentality. Okay. So we have to gear up our level of expectations. The last is go. Get into action. Gather all the information you need. Now it's time to put those things into action. We can make the perfect business plan, the perfect PowerPoint, the perfect training session. At some point, it's going to say you have to go to the start line, ready, and you have to go. So don't create paralysis by analysis. You want to make sure that at some point you got to go into action. So if you have a plan, sometimes you just got to go and just test the water to see the temperature. So it was a little bit fractured there, but let's go through the 5 again. We've got gratitude, we've got giving, gift, gear up your personal expectations, and then get into action. Put all those things that you've learned into action.
Perfect. I think that's going to be the highlight thing. Everybody is going to record it. But a lot of people are asking if you can show one medal. Your favorite medal.
Yeah. Here, I'll show these 2. So this is the medal from
2002.
from 2002.
Uh,
And as you can see, it was, so this one is actually, it's the heaviest medal.
yeah, I've held Derek Farr's medal, and it was so heavy.
Yeah, it's very thick. It's very heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Derek is a very good friend of mine. And then this is the medal from Torino. As you can see, it's very Italian, right? It's very modern.
Mhm. Very
Yeah,
sleek, and
very
yeah,
sleek. And then behind me, I normally don't have these medals out.
yeah,
But the other day, I was like, man, a friend of mine is going to create a video of my medals. He's a photographer and videographer here in Los Angeles, and he says, hey man, has anyone ever done that? And so I normally keep these medals in a box or in a satchel. I can't even, it's over here. They're
I
usually
think people.
in my bedroom. They're like in my sock drawer. People are like, oh my gosh, why did you do that? Keep in your sock drawer. Uh, and the reason why I did that is because these medals are powerful to me, and they're powerful to people who look at them. But the most powerful is the memories that I get when thinking about these. And I never wanted to look at these and feel like, I've made it. I've made it now. I don't have to do anything more. That's why I kind of tucked them away, and I wanted the mentality that I always want to grow. I always want to improve.
Okay.
I'm so, I make so many mistakes all the time. How do I make less mistakes? How do I make better decisions in my life? How do I become a stronger person? How do I become a better person? And so these memories are in my brain, in my body, and the medals are just representative of that. So, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for showing those. So we have about 5 minutes to go, but we'll do something like a rapid fire. So I'll ask you a question,
Sure.
just maybe like a 5-pointer or 2-pointer, something like that. 5 plyometric exercises you like. Just name them.
I like squat jumps,
Hmm.
one-legged skating jumps from the skating position. I like skating jumps, meaning like one leg to the next, right?
Yeah.
I like one-legged angled jumps. So if I'm on one leg, let's say I'm on one leg, okay, I would jump forward in a diagonal motion, right, like this on one leg. And the last would be jumping on an incline or on a set of stairs, jumping on one leg up,
Okay.
like this. So like imagine this is the stairs. I'm on one leg, jump, land, jump, land, jump, land, all on one leg. So I think the one-legged skating jumps are you get the most bang for your buck, right? Because it requires so much activation of your core, your quads, your ankles, your feet, your calves, your mind, and if you want to become a very good short track speed skater, do a lot of those jumps with the right technique.
Okay.
With the right technique. Yeah.
Ice bath or sauna?
Oh, that's tough. Sauna. Yeah,
Sauna.
sauna.
Okay. What is one meal? What's your favorite meal before like an Olympic race?
So this you will like this, Steven. So you'll like this. So back in the day, my favorite meal. This was before I changed my diet, but before the 2000, for example, in 2002, like at the Olympic trials, the night before my time trial, I skated this crazy fast time trial. I had chicken korma, sag paneer, naan, and biryani rice with a side of raita. Yeah, I used to love Indian food. I still love Indian food, but
this was before.
this is the night before. The
night before 2002 Olympics.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a question from a skater called Akash. He's really good. He's been training for the next Olympics, hopefully 2022. He's at a 42 seconds for 500 meters right now. So
Right.
he asked me to ask you this: how hard it is to push yourself during World Cup races? You race all 3 days, and then you race morning, afternoon, evening. And what would you tell yourself if you're doing those, World Cup races? I know it's very tough on your body. How do you cope up with that?
Yeah, so it is challenging on your body. That's what the training is for.
Yeah.
So I think that remembering and understanding that this is a natural feeling you're getting because you're pushing yourself, and so this is natural. So just recognizing that for a second, take a second, say, hey, I feel this way because this is tough. It's hard. It's also okay. I know that when I push myself and it's tough and hard is when I really, really go to the next zone. That's when I really grow. Just like when you want to go faster, you're not going to go faster by skating slower. Right? You're going to go faster by pushing the limits time and time again. So your brain and your body work in cohesion like that. And so to know and appreciate the opportunity and the challenge in front of you. And then also focus on your recovery on the physical side is, at the end of the day, make sure you're doing the right things, making sure you're getting the right amount of sleep, your nutrition is there, you're stretching, you're preparing. And then you have this intention of knowing you're taking it day by day, race by race. Don't worry about tomorrow. Today is the only thing you can control.
3 favorite movies of yours all time, sports or maybe out of sports.
3 movies of all time. I think we all love here in the United States. We all love the Rocky movies because we all see a sense of resemblance. The second movie, I like Miracle on Ice. Which is a famous movie about the 1980 hockey team.
Did you see Cool Runners?
Yeah, I did see Cool Runnings. Yeah. You can say those 3. Yeah.
Okay, and who are the 3 people who really motivated you off skating, but different sports? Who would inspire you, or
Yeah. So I got inspiration from. At the time, I got inspiration from athletes like Muhammad Ali, from people like Lance Armstrong, and then from my father, to be honest with you, just because I saw how hard he worked. That hard work ethic really kind of bled into my life. Yeah.
We have 1 minute left, so tell us one thing every parent should have. Like, I know your father has invested so much in you, and so much he believed in you even before you knew it. So you want to share something about your dad to us, or another quality which you feel somebody should have it?
I mean, I think it's just love, just pure love for your child and for your parents, and understanding that look, your parents, they may not know the career path or the sport that you're in, right? Yeah. They know that the raw love they have. They just want you to be your best. They want you to be happy.
Yeah.
And I knew that from my dad. I knew that my dad he just wanted the best for me, and he wanted to teach me to be my best, to react in the way that I could just become the best athlete, the best person that I could possibly be. And he knew that it wasn't going to be easy. He knew that it was going to be a challenging experience, and I was going to face a lot of challenges, but how I responded to that was going to be eventually how I was going to grow as a person and as a young man. So I'm very grateful.
We have 30 seconds, so I would just like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak your heart out, and big fan of your charity, big fan of what you do for Special Olympics and a lot of things. Looking forward to do another interview sometime later so that we can talk part 2 about it. But thank you so much from the bottom of my heart that you doing this interview means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Great. It's good to see you. Thank you everyone for coming online today. I hope I can eventually see you guys live in person.